So I have not been thinking about this about a conversation this week. Nothing has come to me really. Um, I'm making this at the very last minute because this is my last day of like scheduled recording that I would normally do, and I I guess I'm going to be talking about taking mental breaks and shutting down. Part of this is inspired by no, it's fully whatever. It's inspired by Randy's new blog. Um, Again, if I remember, I'm hoping that I can put her link tree in the description here. I just need to remember it after I'm done editing. Um, because she does have a WordPress site and she has a blog on there, and her site is beautiful, by the way. And she gets some of her writing done there. And she talked about this yesterday, I believe. She posted about just needing time to shut down and how it's something that we've discussed before, not in like a really big discussion conversation kind of way about like, hey, sometimes the things we need are the things we push away, and I guess I always approach that topic or conversation in a way of like we need to stop doing that, um, and I think that she when she posted this blog was saying like yeah the shutdown was needed though, like yes I wish I could be creative, I miss being creative, and like those things are helpful things and I know they are, and when I needed them the most I should have been doing them, but shutting down was also necessary. She didn't really explore that a whole lot further, but that's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about it, because I felt like that inspired me to think about like yeah, shutting down was needed because this week we both had a big shutdown of like creativity and other things. There were other priorities going on that were very overwhelming, each of us individually and together. Um, and so I feel like this kind of goes in tandem with the vlog this week. So check that out, I guess, and they'll both fill each other out. But I started thinking yesterday. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna get back to my vlog this week, and this is a conversation I can have about shutting down because I just did the same thing. It was incredibly hard for me to be creative. I had no mental, emotional energy to allow myself to really be creative. And the vlog isn't even really something I would call creative. It's something that I do need, though, to have these conversations. It's something that really helps me to work through problems. And I just couldn't give it that. I didn't want to do even the logistical part of editing and stuff. Like, I just didn't want to do anything other than things that I wasn't able to do because I was not the only individual in this party that needed to participate in some things in order to move forward. So I didn't really have options for some things. For my individual stuff, I definitely had options on how I wanted to deal with the situation. The situation itself, not so much, was in my control. But how I chose to deal with it was different. It's a different matter, and I had choices there. But I was so overwhelmed, it felt like I didn't have a lot of choice, and I didn't know what to do, and I had no energy to do certain things. Like even if it wasn't creative, like I said, editing the vlog from last week without recording anything new, I could have done that, but it was this logistical thing that I was like, I just don't want to be thinking. It wasn't. I don't know how to explain it. There's two things going on. There was not enough. It wasn't enough of a mental workout to keep me occupied so that I was not thinking about other things. It'd be like washing dishes. Be like, yes, I could do that, but if I'm doing, like, I don't know. I kept up everything else this week that I needed to do, like washing dishes and doing chores and feeding kids and doing family stuff and, just my own things I need to do, like shower and make the bed, whatever. Like, regular stuff, go to work. Like, I went to work every day this week, but, like, it's that stuff all got done. It was just anything else. I couldn't read. Like I found it very difficult to read because if I started reading, I would wander off. Like I didn't have. I don't know. I reading brings me a sense of calm and peace and takes me somewhere and gives me like it's a good coping strategy for me and it's like positive and good. But I have to be in a certain space to do it. Like it's really difficult for me to read if I'm very I don't know what word to use, agitated, but it's not just like a frustration thing. If I'm very energetic, emotionally, mentally, like if there's a lot going on mentally and emotionally for me, it's very hard for me to read. I can't focus because there's so much stillness that the other stuff is like taking over, and that's why I feel like I have to do very physical things. However, painting is something that takes a lot of emotional energy from me, mental energy, and it's not just logistical. There's choices that have to be made. It's work, and I didn't really have time, nor did I feel like I could have anyway this week. Try to be that creative. I wrote a little bit. So I guess going back to this shutdown is that being immensely mentally and emotionally overwhelmed, I've always thought, well, the things that you should be doing are the things you should be doing. You should be doing them even more. Like if my regular coping mechanisms would be doing some writing or being creative or like having some reading time or whatever, that when it comes times like this, I felt like I need to buckle down and double down and do those things even more than I was before. It's way more important now. Part of me still believes that. However, through Randy's insight, maybe a shutdown is needed. However, I think for me, what I need to do is have a structured shutdown. I shut down for a week and didn't know when I was going to be able to do some of these things again because I just couldn't think of how that would happen. But if I had a structured shutdown, if I said, okay, I'm going to take 24 hours to... And I don't know if that'll work, because when you're in that space, when you're mentally, emotionally just completely drained or occupied with other things or whatever, I can't even... It's really difficult to make those decisions. That's the thing. It's almost like I would compare it in a way to maybe being in a depressive state where someone... If you are not your normal self or your average self or whatever, you are not the self that you are used to at all. You feel lost. And like you don't know what to do to even get yourself back there. And mentally, I could tell myself those things that I need to do, but being capable of doing it is something that is tricky. And I am more aware now that it's happened to me for the first time. This is like a day before. I've taken a day before. I've shut down for a day before. I'm like, I don't know how to do the thing like anymore. Like, you know, or I don't even know if it's been more than a day. Maybe a couple days, but definitely not a week straight before. And so I'm more just aware of what, like that I'm capable of doing it. So obviously I need to figure something out with that, and that it's a thing that happens, and like, you know, everyone is different, and we have different strengths and levels of strength, I guess, and tolerances, and I don't know what are the word I'm looking for here, but ability, I guess. And this week I did not feel like I had the ability to do these things that I tell myself are things I need to do. I feel like if the weather was there and I had the time, I would have gone for a bike ride. But even that, I'm like, I didn't have a choice, so it was not like, oh, I have this desire to do this thing, and then, or I normally would do this thing, but I have no desire for it, or whatever. It is really difficult to force yourself out of something. So, like I said, if I compared it to a depressive state, how do you force yourself out of depression? Like, someone can tell you logical facts of what you need to do, but actually having the strength to do them is way different. And I think that willing yourself out of a state is something that does need to be practiced. Because even in this place right now where I'm talking about a forced shutdown, like, I had a week where I was just shut down, and maybe, again, the part of that was being lost and not really being in this scenario before and not knowing what was going on and like being in limbo and just like not having control over a huge aspect. I need to recognize, just by saying that, I recognize I have control of this other aspect. What can I do, right? And that's very limiting sometimes, and whatever, especially because if you're relying on another factor, another thing, an event, a person, or whatever, in order to resolve the situation, which is what I was doing, I couldn't resolve the situation on my own. not completely, not in a way of, I don't know how to explain that. You can always resolve an issue on your own, no matter what it is. If you have a conflict and it involves another person, you could just walk away, and that's, I guess, that resolves the issue. Whether you're in like like in an event, like in the middle, like you literally walk away from the person in the middle of an argument, and that resolves that resolves something. That resolves that there's no argument anymore. And then there's other consequences to that. But I also mean like, if you have a friendship with someone that isn't working, right? You could just walk away from that and then stay away, and that resolves it on your end. You don't need two people to walk away. You do. You're walking away from someone. What I mean is that you don't need their input. But I felt this week I did need somebody's input. I felt like I could not resolve things on my own unless they were things that I didn't want to do, that I didn't feel ready to do, that I didn't feel were good to do. I didn't feel like it was the right choice to walk away. And what other option did I have than kind of stay in the vicinity or the situation with the other and try to resolve things. So I'm going to try to put it into practice, and I just don't know if it'll work, that if I am ever in a situation like that again, if I can do a forced shutdown, if I can say, okay, right now you don't feel like doing freaking anything, you feel sick, you have no idea what's going on, you're lost, you're emotional, do that for 24 hours, but that's it. And then you need to do something, and maybe make goals. Like, if I put that into practice, I really feel like I would benefit from it so much as a person. Then, okay, you don't feel like doing it, you're in a really whatever place right now, and you can't just, okay, you've got a day, and then you need to start making some goals. And depending on the situation, that might mean the next day everything's back to normal, or it's not emotionally, but you push yourself to do the things, right? It's like people say, like, if you actually physically smile, you might or laugh, even when you don't feel like it, you might actually have those feelings, right? So if I move forward with like a creative routine or whatever it is, maybe it is going to go to like, okay, treat tomorrow like it was any other Tuesday or whatever, and that's it, and you're over and you're done. The 24 hours is done. That's it. Or it could be, hey, you've got 24 hours to feel this way, and then the next day make a list that day and say, okay, tomorrow I just want to meditate for just one thing, just meditate for 10 minutes. If I don't feel like up to anything else, then I won't do anything else. But I feel like that would be really helpful for me. Something I never really had to think about before. That now that it's been brought up, I'm like, just the inspiration of that idea of like, you know what, sometimes shutting down is needed, and beforehand, it's like, it was a vicious cycle. If I was like, I mean, this term has come up a lot in my life lately, but it's okay to not be okay, and I think that even though I agree with that, I don't follow through with that, especially when it comes to myself. No, I shouldn't say that. I don't feel like in theory, it's one thing, in practice it's another for anybody. I feel like I hold the same standard, whether it's myself or other people, when it comes to this thing, but I could be wrong, that it's not okay to not be okay. And I feel like that is what I put into practice, whereas in theory I agree that it's okay to not be okay, but it has all these stipulations and caveats, like it's okay to not be okay for this amount of time, or to this extreme. And I do believe those things are true. I think at a certain point it's not okay to do certain things because you're not okay. Just because it's okay to not be okay doesn't mean that you can act a certain way towards other people or whatever, right? And it's not okay to not be okay for a long time if it is severely damaging yourself when you could possibly do something to be okay. So like, it's okay to not be okay, but it's also okay and needed for you to figure out how to be okay. It's okay to not be okay, but in the moment, you recognize that you're not okay and that it's okay to not be okay, but you need to also recognize in that same breath that this is temporary and that you need to somehow be looking at some way to be okay again for yourself, for your own good. And I mean, if your actions are negatively impacting other people, then I guess for them too, but really for you, because if they're negatively impacting other people, it is going to have consequences for you too, and you're probably not going to feel good. So I guess that took a turn, and it all relates, but it's okay to not be okay is probably going to be the title of this now. Um, and that, again, I think for me, I would try in my personal practice to be like, hey, I'm shutting down for this amount of time because I can't be motivated or don't have the energy or just feel too depressed or sad or whatever it is to really do anything, but I can only allow myself that for a day, and the next day I have to do one thing, at least one thing, and then build on that. Um, because I felt like this past week I could have handled differently. If all the other circumstances were the same, I could have handled it differently on my end. So, yeah, that's it, and we'll see you on another time.